Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good day to each and everyone. So again, this is our fifth lecture for ES 17. So in this video discussion, I will be talking about, or we will be discussing about the buoyancy, at the same time the stresses on the thin-walled pressure vessels. Okay, but before anything else, before I formally start, I am reminding everyone that you should have downloaded the file that I have provided for this lecture. And again, I highly encourage that you better print that said file for you to easily cope up, or for you to easily follow in my lecture discussion. Okay, so to start, let's start our discussion with buoyancy. So a principle discovered by the Greek scientist Archimedes states that any body immersed in a fluid is acted upon by an upward force buoyant equal to the weight of the displaced fluid. So, with that said definition, that is the definition for the Archimedes principle. So, any body daw, kahit anong body na naka-emerge o nakalublog sa tubig, ay mayroong upward force na nag-oppose, or that makes that certain body remain at its place equal to the weight of the displaced fluid. So, meaning to say, if you were to see this one, to clearly understand this Archimedes principle, let's consider this bottle which contains a water or a fluid, and then for example there contains this styrofoam. As you can see, the styrofoam is floating, right? What makes that styrofoam float is because of buoyant force. So that is yan yung principle behind sa Archimedes principle. Lahat daw ng body na naga-float or naka-submerge sa isang tubig ay mayroong upward force. So, yung upward force na yun yung tinatawag na buoyant force. Pero in totality, all in all, yung concept behind kung bakit naga-float yung styrofoam na ito is because of Archimedes principle. At the same time, if you just know, yung mga barko, they are floating they're floating, right? What makes them float is because of Archimedes principle. So yun yung concept behind sa Archimedes principle. This principle is also known as the law of hydrostatics. It applies to both floating and submerged bodies and to all fluids. So, as we all know, as being stated in here, kung yung body daw is naka-float, applicable, or yun yung tinatawag na Archimedes principle. Pero take note, it only applies not to a floating body, but at the same time to a submerged bodies. At the same time to all types of fluids, pwedeng water, pwedeng oil, mercury, so on and so forth. So, let's consider this figure. This one, okay? As you can see, there's this water, let's say ocean or sea water, and we have this iceberg. As you can see sa iceberg, there is this part na naka-float, there is this part na naka-submerge, at saka yung part na hindi naka-submerge. So, yung concept behind Archimedes principle is that lahat daw ng body or any body that is submerged in a fluid is mayroong upward force. Mayroong upward force, which is the buoyant force. Okay? That upward force is the buoyant force. And that buoyant force is equal to the weight of the submerged body. So, meaning to say, as you can see, take note, yung buoyant force na ito is equal to the weight of the submerged body. Meaning sa weight ng submerged body, it's yung weight ng nakalublob sa tubig. For example, this one. Okay? So ito yung equivalent ng buoyant force na ito. Yung weight ng nakalublob sa tubig. Ito. Pero, question, sir, what if yung tubig or yung body is nakasubmerge as a whole? Ganyan. So meaning to say, yung weight na dapat i-consider natin is yung weight ng total body or itong lahat ng iceberg na ito. Pero, refer to your notes, formula ng buoyant force is equal to gamma times volume displaced. Okay? Formula ng buoyant force is equal to gamma of fluid times the volume displaced. Take note, yung sa prelim natin, na-discuss natin na yung gamma is a unit to weight of the fluid. So, for example, this one, okay, this one. As you can see, di ba may gamma dito? Yung gamma dito is yung gamma ng salt water, okay? Tapos yung VD or yung volume displaced is yung volume ng nakalublob sa tubig. For example, this one, yung volume na ibig sabihin dito is ito lang, itong dito, itong part na ito, okay? Itong nakalublob sa tubig. So that is the volume displaced that we are referring to. Pero kung yung volume displaced is yung total volume or yung total body, yung volume displaced is equal to total volume or the total volume of the iceberg. So yan yung concept behind the principle of Archimedes. So considering the body, kindly check that body. So here, as you can see, the net upward force acting on the body is the buoyant force. Yung sabi ko kanina, yung upward force that makes the body float or being submerged is because of buoyant force. That is this one here. Yung BF dito is the buoyant force. So here is the derivation of the formula. Pero the total formula of the buoyant force is BF is equal to gamma times volume displaced. Yung sabi ko kanina. So yung gamma is the unit weight of the fluid. At saka yung volume D or VD is the volume displaced. Pero take note, to solve problems in buoyancy, you have to identify the forces acting and apply conditions of the static of equilibrium. And I believe you have discussed already what are the conditions of static equilibrium in your ES11. So we have the summation of all forces along X, or the horizontal forces, the forces along Y, that is the vertical forces, and the moment. Okay? Yung moment in a certain point. So yun. For homogeneous solid body of volume floating in a homogeneous fluid at rest. Ibig sabihin dito, homogeneous solid body. Meaning to say, yung certain body na yun is iba-iba yung composition. For example, okay, consider this one. Consider this figure. Ang ibig sabihin sa homogeneous body is, for example, consider this wood. For example, the upper part of the wood, this one is let's say a steel. And then this one is actually a wood or timber. So ito yung sinasabi na or tinatawag na homogeneous. Meaning to say, magkaiba yung composition ng body na yon. At the same time, nandoon din stated doon na magkaiba yung or homogeneous fluid. Meaning to say, in a certain body, it composes or it is being comprised of not just only one fluid but one or more fluid. Okay? So with that being said, yung formula ng homogeneous solid body in a homogeneous fluid at rest is VD is equal to specific gravity of body over specific gravity of liquid times the volume, or it's the unit weight of the body over the unit weight of the liquid times the volume. So that would be all for our discussion in buoyancy. So next video, I will be discussing about the thin-walled or the stress on thin-walled pressure vessels.